Hi everybody, welcome to today's session of UPSC Buffet by Gallant IAS. Today we are going to have a very different sort of session where we discuss how to approach the 2026 prelims or even the 2027 prelims which you are planning to attend. Here I'll be crystallizing all the information that you need on how to structure your studies to begin your preparation. Since we are approaching prelims and this is January, it's a good time. Many of you would have started the preparation already and many of you will be waiting for February. It's up to your convenience only, that's fine. But however or whenever you are studying or starting to prepare, never miss on these three areas. I have crystallized everything into these three headers. So today we will be discussing in detail how to approach this. I'll be providing a detailed guideline how to cover each and every subject with the sources included. So without any further ado, let's get started. So first, for right off the bat, UPSC has got a very vast syllabus. One which could take, if you are writing everything down, it could take pages. So even if you are trying to learn the syllabus itself, it's going to be hectic. But we know the basic subjects and we know that if you have gone through the PYQ, you know that not everything mentioned in the subject or the source are important. And some are much more important than others, meaning that there are repeated themes and more important areas and less important areas. So it's very, very important to identify the important areas and pay due attention to them and make them very thorough and then move on to the less important ones and not the other way around. Many a times aspirants make a mistake of approach this exam in a very linear fashion. This is one exam that that does require you to have a very dynamic approach rather than a linear approach. You don't have to, or if you are going page by page on each and every book, say for Lakshmikant, and if you are starting from the page 1 and ending at the page, the last page, you won't be remembering anything. And the sad part is that it's not because you haven't put the effort, but because you have put the effort in a wrong way and wrong place. So it's very, very important to remember that you have to be putting your effort very carefully, very calculatively into the places which are repeatedly asked and are more susceptible to be asked in the upcoming examination. So and having an idea about that really helps, and this is something that we have done with our all the sessions about UPSC Buffet, where we discussed everything in detail in subject wise and theme wise also. So go through that, you will get a very good idea about each and every year question paper and each and every subject. So one way I would recommend you is whenever you are trying to start a subject, whether it be polity, economy, environment or anything, just go through. So you should be putting in the effort and you should be getting the benefit, because in modern history or even art and culture or medieval or modern, even for medieval, the portion is really large, and even if you put that much effort covering everything thoroughly, at most you will be getting 2 to 3 questions, and even those questions you won't be able to solve. So if you have put that much effort into polity or economy, you would have gotten more questions right, and you would have most surely cleared prelims. So this is one mistake everybody makes. You go through a linear fashion. You start with history cover to cover, then you get lost midway and you lose focus. And even in polity, you lose focus halfway, because the core areas of polity are very evident. It's not Article 1 or citizenship, things like that. It's obviously fundamental rights, fundamental duties, DPSPs, constitution, parliament, judiciary, and some scheduled areas and Panchayat Raj, like local self-government. These are the core areas. I'm not saying that questions will be asked from these areas only, but I'm saying that questions will definitely be asked from these areas. That's the thing. So remember that difference. I'm not saying questions will be asked from these portions only, but I'm saying questions will be asked and most definitely will be asked from these areas. So it's always better to be prepared from the short areas and leave the rest for our logic and our understanding, so you can do that in the actual examination. So be prepared. Being prepared is all about expecting the worst case scenario and be ready with it in the most capable way. So for example, if you ask me, the most rewarding subjects would be polity, economy, geography and environment. So if I am preparing this examination for 2026 or 2027, around February, I'll be starting with polity, economy, anything from the subject that suits your timeline or your comfort. Okay, I'm not saying that you should start with polity. No, many times test series are starting with polity, or most likely they'll be starting with polity. So if you want to keep track of that based on your test series that you have subscribed for, I recommend that, then go with that. But I wouldn't say that you should be starting with polity or economy or anything. It's up to your comfort. You can choose that, but it's imperative that you cover any one of these, or like cover everything from this area first before moving to the second portion, which is the lesser rewarding ones. The lesser rewarding ones are modern history. The reason why modern history has become lesser rewarding is not because the subject is very hectic or anything, but the number of questions are being reduced. Because in 20 up until 2022, I would have placed modern history in the most rewarding areas, but up recently the number of questions have reduced. That's the reason why I moved it to the second category. And ancient and medieval, as always, is not that rewarding, because the kind of questions that you get are mostly like either it will be on the extreme difficult part, or most likely will be easy, and the number of questions are much lesser also, and they are not a actual determinant on whether or you are not going to clear this prelims. And this science and technology portion, I am a very vocal advocate of science and technology portion in prelims, but I have placed it in the lesser rewarding areas because the way you are studying it really matters, and the kind of questions that we can expect from science and technology varies quite a lot. So I wouldn't recommend you putting your effort into science and technology, things like that, right off the bat. You should start with the basic areas, then cover the lesser rewarding ones, including the science and technology one. And a detailed strategy on science and technology I'll be sharing, and not just of science and technology, each and every topic that I've mentioned here, the core subjects, I'll be discussing the core areas that you should be focusing, and in form of a checklist, so that you can go through the checklist and make sure that you have covered these portions, and so you can be very sure that you are prepared well for the upcoming examination. So that's the second part. Okay, so start with the most rewarding one, then proceed with the lesser rewarding, and remember this classification: the rewarding ones according to the current trend, starting from 2022 to 2025, this is the trend. Polity, economy, geography and environment are the most rewarding subjects with the maximum number of questions, followed by modern history, ancient India. Science and technology does have number of questions, but the issue with that is it doesn't have a very clear-cut syllabus or anything. So it may right off the bat jumping into science and technology can get you lost. But don't worry, I'll be discussing about that in detail also. Then next up, we have, like you always know, focus on the repeated themes on core subjects. This is very, very, very important, because like I told you, start with the most rewarding subjects. Polity has got immense, like n number of questions and n number of topics, and you cannot be going through each and every topic giving them equal importance. That's not at all the right strategy, and that strategy is destined to fail, because UPSC will be asking a very conceptual question from the fundamental rights part, fundamental duties part, or DPSP part. But if you superficially read through that, you won't be able to solve the question. So you need to have a greater understanding about these areas, and regarding topics like citizenship and other areas, you just have to have a very basic knowledge. I mean, even if the question comes up like very tough, it's okay to leave it also. But don't leave many questions in polity, economy, geography or environment. You have to attend the maximum number of questions in these, and because these are the core static part of the examination, where the actual knowledge really helps, and actual knowledge as well as logic really helps. The other part is where a variation or swing can happen. So focus on these areas. For polity, I would say preamble, fundamental rights, fundamental duty, DPSP, parliamentary, judiciary. These are the core areas. I know there are other areas. There are schedules. There have been questions about scheduled areas, local self-government, etc. But starting with these areas is the way to go. It is must. You shouldn't be learning Lakshmikant cover to cover in a linear fashion. Start with preamble, then move on to fundamental rights, then move on to fundamental duties, then DPSP, then parliament, then judiciary and executive. Okay, that's how you should be going. Otherwise, you will be forgetting everything. So I'm speaking from experience. From my mentees, I have seen that this is the issue why, a simple question on Article 21, many aspirants who have read Lakshmikant multiple times have made it wrong. And many aspirants who have read everything has made, fundamental duties or any question from DPSP, like Article 51, separation of judiciary from executive. That particular question, many of them couldn't remember, or many of them couldn't comprehend or make it right, because they didn't pay due attention to DPSP. They have read DPSP, but they have not internalized it. These are the topics that you should be internalizing very well. Okay. Then for economy, you need to be covering the monetary policy, budgeting, bond markets. Details about each and every topic I will be discussing in the checklist portion. So don't worry about that now. Okay, for the time being, I'm just mentioning the macro topics, that's all. Then geography, climatology and oceanography. That doesn't mean that you have to go through everything in climatology and oceanography. Everything, the class 11 NCERT is, I would say, a very holistic and comprehensive source. Never go beyond the class 11 NCERT. I've seen the physical geography part, like the world geography. Don't go beyond that. That is more than enough for you to get most questions right. And there will be mentioning of everything that UPSC asks. Many a times aspirants will be surprised with the bouncer kind of questions, but they will have some underpinnings or some mentioning, at least in the tables or at least in the pictures. There will be a mentioning of those phenomena that are asked. So be very thorough with the class 11 NCERT world geography portion and also the Indian geography portion, but pay more attention to the world geography part, then move on to the Indian geography part. So I wouldn't recommend you, if you have a decent understanding about geography or taken a PCM class, don't start with class 6 or anything that is under class 11 NCERT, anything other than class 11 NCERT. Focus on class 11 NCERT. Questions are directly based on that. They will have a direct connection. And modern history, like I told you, there was a trend where modern history used to be among the top rewarding subjects, but right now that's not the case, because number of questions have reduced and the kind of questions also have taken a slight shift, because more or less they have remained in these areas. There used to be a trend of questions that are asked across the modern history part, but right now, if you remember correctly, where I have discussed the modern history portion, the number of questions have reduced to 2, 3 or 4 in the recent years, and the kind of questions are also following a clear trend. They will be focusing more on the early colonial settlements, names of those settlements, and from which kingdom they have acquired or they have annexed those territories. That will be the one thing. Then secondly will be major acts by the British, especially the acts following the 1900s and some charter acts. And the other one would be the British policies like land revenue system, things like that. These are all very simple topics. You just have to read them, just understand them and do a few questions on them. It's very easy and questions will be straightforward also. But the issue is that modern history, you bombard yourself with a lot of knowledge and you get confused. So try to follow a lean strategy where you don't have to be very bulky when it comes to content or anything. Just follow a lean strategy where focus on these areas are the must, and then do a couple of questions. Then whatever questions that comes, you will be able to solve. And if that question is out of your reach, be sure that will be out of reach for everybody and you won't be having an issue, so you can comfortably leave that question. Then ancient and medieval. Now this is one area that there has been a repeated theme, and many a times the theme is that either you know it or nobody knows it. Okay, if everybody it's like everybody knows it or nobody knows it. And the easiest one will be coming from the Sangam areas, like the Sangam literature, Sangam age questions like that. IVC questions are also asked, especially about some basic questions are also being asked, like the Dolavira, Mohenjo-daro, Great Bath, things like that are also being asked. And not much questions have been asked about Vedic age. Early and later Vedic age are not being asked often these days. But questions about Ashoka, definitely one question you can expect from Ashoka, and that will be either about rock edit or Ashoka's philosophy. If it's about Ashoka's philosophy, it's very easy, you can easily solve it. Also Buddhism and Jainism, core areas, understand that, but don't worry, we'll be going to the details. Then environment, repeated species. I told you, like the species are most likely very much repeated. And in 2024, UPSC have gone an absolute bomb by throwing like bonobo, elk, things like that, which nobody knows. So it's fine to leave that. But other than that, if a question about golden mouse deer or rusty spotted cat, things like that are being asked, we know that because they have already been asked in the PYQs. And I've told you that be prepared with the species that are already been asked and develop an insight whether or not that's a primate or that's a bird, that's an amphibian or a reptile. And I told you that it's worth noting their behavior, whether they are nocturnal, crepuscular or diurnal. Okay, so that's one another thing about these species. Mostly you'll be getting 1 or 2 questions, and also the recent trend, I told you, questions will be about ants or honeybees. Some human-like intelligence will be displayed, and it's a short question, a short answer. You know that because having that logic, you can easily arrive it. Then Ramsar sites. This is a very repeated theme. Latest addition to Ramsar sites are the ones you should be looking at, not the first Ramsar sites. Latest addition to Ramsar sites, you should be looking at each and every state, like the states in which they are located, things like that. Then national parks. You don't have to study every national park, but try to solve as many questions from environment so that you can actually remember these national park, where exactly something like Jaldapara National Park is there, or Sarojini Naidu Wildlife Sanctuary is there, things like that. You need to be having an understanding. Namdappa, question about Namdappa was also been asked multiple times. So have that idea, but don't take a single day to learn each and every national park. Try to learn at least 2 every day and go with it. Like, dedicate some time for national parks and go run it like a clockwork for 1 or 2 months, and you will be thorough with that. Try to take test series. Then you can actually remember things. Even if you mark it wrong, then you will be getting an idea that okay, this should be the right answer. Science and technology, I have broadly divided it into space programs and biotechnology. Okay, there is another area that is celestial bodies. I told you that celestial bodies are one area where UPSC asks one question, and it's an extreme. Either you know your answer, and very little logic is applicable in case of celestial bodies, because that's a entirely factual thing. So these are the core areas, I would say: space programs and biotechnology, and details of which we'll be covering in the checklist portion. So I'll be going a little faster. You may take screenshot of this checklist. I'll be sharing this document in our official channel, so you can use it for your reference, because I highly recommend, if you don't have a clear-cut strategy, base your preparation for prelims based on this strategy, because this is not a very radical strategy or anything. This is something or the guidelines I'm giving you is like very focused and very structured. So you should start with these areas, move on these areas, and ensure that these areas are covered based on checklist. Then you are good to go. That's it. And these are all based on PYQ, personal experience understanding, and so I can highly vouch for that. If you have a strategy on your own, follow that. But if you are not having a clear-cut strategy or trying to find it difficult to stick to a strategy, I highly recommend this, because this is not a very hectic strategy. This is where I would like to call it the smart work on cracking prelims, because this is what many aspirants, many veteran aspirants, and myself included, does before every prelims. Because we don't have time for covering each and every topic, but we'll be covering these areas and going for the prelims. So that's it. Starting with the polity, these are the most important one. Remember, whatever I have mentioned here is not an exhaustive list. There will be additions, of course, and the topics that I have omitted are purposefully omitted because they are not rewarding. So the goal is, or the goal with this checklist is that you should be thorough with everything that is mentioned here, and anything that is outside this checklist you should be covering afterwards. Okay, that's the logic for every checklist that I am providing. Whatever that is mentioned in this checklist, you should be covering. That's non-negotiable. And everything that you feel important outside this checklist should be covered after covering these topics in topics of checklist. Okay, and also the things I have mentioned here, not everything is equally important. Some are more important than others. Okay, remember that. And you may ask your mentors, and you can actually develop an insight based on which all are important and which are less important. But I'll give you a heads up. Like I told you, salient features of Constitution comparison with US. This is definitely not as important as preamble, fundamental rights, DPSP, or fundamental duties. So you know that. So schedules, this is important, but not as important as these. But learning this, learning everything will give you a holistic idea of prelims, and this is very much structured and crystallized. So this is like in the Lakshmikant, you just have to go through, take a single topic, go and read the NCRT, like NCRT or the Lakshmikant, whatever book you are following, and then give it a tick. Then attend a test series, and you will be fine. You will be done with the topic. So likewise, you can cover every topic in short span of time. That's the goal of this checklist, and you will get an idea, and you will have a track of your performance. So which all portions I have covered. So in bills, if you have read about everything and you are trying to attend the questions, and then you are not able to find the difference. For example, if you are making mistake in constitutional amendment bill or confusing between ordinary bills and money bills, then you have to mark it like, okay, I need to revisit this area. So that's how you improvise your studies in a very structured fashion. So it's very important for that. So I'm not going to read everything because you can see for yourself, and I think you may actually take a screenshot based on this also. So that's all about it. But if you need the document, it will be available in our Gallant's official channel. So this is one area for polity. This is polity in one page, that everything that needs to be learned and thoroughly understood. Okay, anything outside this or things that I have not mentioned this should be covered only after covering this, otherwise the strategy wouldn't work. And I've clearly mentioned, disclaimers. These are must be conceptually clear. Remaining portions can be covered through test series, and these are the annex portions. Annex portions are the ones should be covered after covering the core areas. Okay, this is for polity. Remember that. And then economy. Economy also, this is the one pager for economy, and don't get alarmed by the number of things. These are just one page, but like 1 or 2 line concepts. That's it. You don't have to spend that much of time. But everything that UPSC have asked in the last 10 years have crystallized into this single page. And these are the most rewarding, repeated topics that UPSC is asking. National income. Not that important right now, but definitely UPSC can ask this question because it's a very basic thing and UPSC expect us to understand that. So national income is important. Budget, of course, revenue budget, capital budget. So the receipts, the revenue receipts, the capital receipts, revenue expenditure, the capital expenditure. Very, very important. UPSC is repeatedly asking each and every year. So there is no way around it. It's very easy topic. You can easily understand that. We will be conducting masterclass on each and every topic. So if you are finding any area like polity, economy difficult, follow our masterclass. Join Gallant IAS for our masterclass. Each and every topic for prelims will be covered in detail in the focus of examination. So very unlike your PCM preparation where we won't be developing a foundational understanding, we'll be developing an understanding to solve these questions. So we'll be conducting this masterclass later, later closer to this examination. Then this balance of payment, exchange rate, near rear, nominal effective exchange rate and real effective exchange rate, then inflation, then monetary policy, very, very, very important. What is CRR, SLR, MSF, liquidity adjustment facility, open market operation. UPSC cannot ask a question without that. So it's absolutely essential for learn everything about this. Okay. Then monetary policy committee, FDI, FII, FPI. These are all simple concepts. It's not like you may think that there won't be multiple pages on what is CRR or what is FDI or anything. There will be like half a page thing, and it's very conceptually easy to understand. So it's not at all a difficult portion. For me, economy is the most rewarding thing. I have to remember very little things. The only things I have to remember would be, when it comes to budget or anything. And questions on budget will be like 1 or 2 questions. That's fine. But other than that, economy is the most conceptually rewarding and most fulfilling experience when it comes to prelims, because you don't have to learn much. It's very simple thing. Just have an understanding. It's like doing math, and that gives you a satisfaction when you learn and correct a paper. So that's all about it. Then these financial instruments. These are slightly tricky, but even that also can be done. No, it's not that difficult. It's very easy. Just definition, just how they work. So if you're struggling to know what exactly is the difference between certificate of deposit and a promissory note or a commercial paper, just try to link it with an example. Okay, imagine an example. That's how you should be learning these concepts. Okay, don't just simply learn the definition and go, because you won't be able to solve any answer with that. But based on your understanding, try to write down or remember an example. Then it will be fine. It will be etched in your brain, and you will be fine to go. Then this GST any changes to GST structure, things like that. Then NPA. This is not that important, but questions like liquidity coverage ratio and capital adequacy ratio could be asked. Okay. And money aggregates like the money multiplier, bonds, indices like index of industrial production. What is the index of industrial production? Who publishes that? And what's the value that defines growth or contraction? Things like that. Then index of core industries, purchasing managers index, consumer price index, and wholesale price index. Difference between them, which all goods are included in the basket of both of the indices, and which agency is publishing that. Things like that. Very basic and very easy. So then unemployment. This is slightly tricky even for me. I just confuse it. The usual status, weekly status, and current daily status. But it's very easy only. Just reading it in a first reading itself, you will be getting it. So I highly recommend you focus well on economy, and economy is very, very rewarding. UPSC will be asking at least 10 questions from that, and you will be able to get almost 9 questions right, and that's like half the job done. So that's how you should be approaching. Then comes the environment. Environment is a mix of I would say polity and economy in terms of approach, because here you have to remember quite a lot of things, but at the same time many things can be imagined, because we have been, many of you, like almost everybody are curious about animals and plants, so we will be having some sort of interest and some sort of picture memory regarding that. So many a times questions becomes easy because we have got a picture or a curious insight on that matter. So environment is very rewarding. Of course, this is an exam for forest service as well, so number of questions will be very high only, and that's not going to change. And the questions will be, these are the core topics, and you don't need to understand everything in detail. I'm just saying that so you get an idea that like you will be having a decent coverage on environment. So environment and its components, okay, no direct question will be asked, but something like niche could be asked. So other than that, nothing very much question worthy is there in this particular topic. So I'm not saying that you have to go through each and every topic, solve multiple questions on based on that. No, just learn it and understand it. Then ecological pyramid. There are pyramids of mass and pyramids of energy, and you know that some are inverted, some are upright, and in the marine ecosystem it's the other way around. So having an idea about pyramid really helps. And this don't just learn about pyramid like okay, in the terrestrial ecosystem pyramids, like the pyramid is upright, the pyramid of biomass is upright, things like that. Just imagine that pyramid of biomass is upright, meaning that as we go up in the food chain, the mass of the total biomass at the higher end is reducing, meaning that a lot of accumulation is taking place, lot of energy loss is taking place. Have that understanding, okay? Don't just simply go and learn things, okay, this is that, that is that, because if you understand that lot of mass is lot of energy is being lost and mass is been reducing, you can very well understand the biological accumulation phenomena, you can understand the biomagnification phenomena. So connect with those phenomena with these. Then biotic interactions like commensalism, amensalism, parasitism, things like that, competition, symbiotic relations, things like that. Then biogeochemical cycle. Don't try to remember each and every stage. Just try to remember the basic stage, the sulfur cycle, phosphorus cycle, carbon cycle, water cycle, like how these things circle back and forth in the ecosystem. Then ecological succession, basic, how a xerarch became a hydrarch, things like that. Then ecosystems, the questions are asked based on this, types of forest, but these questions are very much repeated. So going through the PYQ, you will get the answer and you will actually get the conceptual understanding. So whatever topics that are being asked in the PYQ in these portions, it's very easy. Just go through the PYQ, get the understanding, because in terms of forest, the kind of questions that are repeatedly asked is about tropical rainforest, and the core concept they are asking is the tropical rainforest has got high degree of decomposition because of the high temperature and moisture. So the soil is very less fertile, like it's borderline infertile. So that's the concept that UPSC has been asking. I think they have framed the same idea at least 3 times in the last 5 years in a different way. So same idea, different way, but you don't have to confuse it. If you know the basic working, you know it. Also the grassland, question about grassland as to why the grasslands remain the way they are, with mostly grass and little large trees, etc. And the kind of factors that could lead on to that. Then desert ecosystem. Wetlands are very important. Try to learn something about wetlands. Since apart from Ramsar Convention, try to learn something about wetlands and remember that they play an active role in the aquatic cycles. Then they sustain a lot of the biodiversity, and they also filter heavy metals, things like that. Also, coral ecosystem is also important. How this coral ecosystem is formed, what are coral polyps and zooxanthellae, and what is coral bleaching, things like that. Mangrove ecosystem is also important. What kind of trees are growing in mangrove and what are they called, the pneumatophores, and then how they are tolerating the salinity, how are they getting their nutrients, and what are the benefits of this mangrove for farmers or for coastline protection, things like that. So that's all. Then eutrophication and algal bloom, you know that. So here the two concepts are biological oxygen demand and chemical oxygen demand. And coral bleaching, pollution, air quality index, types of smoke, e-waste. E-waste question, you can expect it again, extended producer responsibility, things like that. Then acid rain, which all pollutants are capable of producing acid rain. NO2 and SO2, the question has been already asked. Bioremediation, this is one area that UPSC is repeatedly asking in different format. Bioremediation meaning that cleaning up of pollutants using biological methods, like using plants, animals, fungus, or any other microorganism. That's called bioremediation. And if plants are used, it's called phytoremediation, things like that. So the umbrella term is bioremediation. Our bio toilets in railways are a form of bioremediation. The same way, UPSC have also asked one more question: bioreactors. Bioreactors is a form of bioremediation where in an aquaculture ecosystem, biofilters actually convert harmful substances into useful substances, things like that. Then bioreactors are also being used, membrane bioreactors, so they are used in wastewater treatment. All of this question comes from the bioremediation part. So you may just Google and understand what are the major bioremediation techniques used, and all you need to understand is they will be giving some keywords. You just have to remember it and their application. Very simple. Then renewable energy. This is another area where I struggle because this has got a lot of numbers. So percentage share, like how much gigawatt of installed capacity is there for each and every one, or how much is for renewable, how much is for non-renewable, and in renewable how much is the share of solar, how much is the share of wind, then hydro, etc. Also the states having the highest production capacity, states having the largest solar park, things like that are important, repeatedly asked. Then have an understanding about how ocean thermal energy works, geothermal energy works, and if these are and where in India are these facilities found. Then waste to energy, pyrolysis, things like that, like how waste to energy converted, pyrolysis methods like that. So just Google waste to energy technologies and you may get a list of how these things are made done. And the questions won't be difficult. They'll be giving a keyword and they will be asking about for example pyrolysis. So plasma pyrolysis will be the question, and they'll be asking this is associated with what, and in that waste to energy will be an option. So that way you can actually answer the question. So that's all understanding is needed. That is all the understanding that is needed. You don't have to go into the details. Fuel cells, they are actually important. You have to understand how fuel cells work, like the chemical reaction that leading to the production of electricity. You need to understand that. And of course I've told you that fuel cells produce absolutely no pollutants, only water vapor. So that's one important thing. Fuel cells are very important, especially hydrogen is very, very important. So hydrogen rainbow, carbon rainbow, very, very important. Okay, I think I've added that also. Then climate change, greenhouse gas emissions, rank gases based on their potency and half-life. This is important. One area UPSC will be asking is ranking gases based on their potency, because some gases are very potent but their half-life is less. But for example, methane has got a higher potency compared to carbon dioxide, but the issue is that its half-life is less. But carbon dioxide has got lesser potency, but it leaves more. That's what I'm saying by half-life is more. So do that. Then ozone depleting substances, some are more potent than other, remember that. Then carbon sink. What are carbon sink? Like basic carbon sequestration. Questions about carbon capture, carbon sequestration is every year that is being asked. So connect it and understand it. So if you have learned all that portion and in your checklist, you can take a printout and tick that carbon sink is done, and you will be thorough with that. Then comes the climate change organizations. You have to have an idea about everything. Okay, and I've very clearly given a table for this in the environment portion. So if you want, you can go and check on that. That's a very clear and crisp table. In a table format, I have given information about every protocol. So when was this formed, and is it legally binding, and did India ratify or did USA not ratify, and what are all the substances in question, and major provisions like access benefit sharing for the Nagoya Protocol, and clean development mechanism for Kyoto Protocol. So the questions will be clean development mechanism, joint implementation associated with what? That's a simple question, but that will be the kind of question. Or next up, UPSC will be asking what is clean development mechanism, or what is access and benefit sharing in Nagoya Protocol. So questions like that could be expected. So that's all about it. Then agriculture, mixed farming, integrated farming, zero budget natural farming, very important, organic farming and rainbow farming. Okay, rainbow farming is one where you cultivate a variety of crops. Okay, so these are all slightly important. Just a definition is more than enough, nothing more. Zero budget natural farming, it's not a very hectic concept. zero tillage, no use of artificial fertilizers, things like that. So that's basic idea, and it's very good for carbon sequestration, because we are not plowing or tilling the land. The carbon will be sequestered in the land itself, and then there will be a limited impact of pest or things like that, and the farmers can actually get some good yield and because of the lower environmental impact, because with every cycle of fertilizer used, the fertility of the land actually decreases, because that's a vicious cycle. So zero budget natural farming tries to break that circle. Then comes the important part. Every act that I've mentioned here are very important, especially these 4 acts, because questions could be asked. Critical wildlife habitat has been asked, and Forest Rights Act also been asked, and then biodiversity management committee has been asked. Every year a question can be expected. Then Environmental Protection Act question is being asked. Then schedules of Wildlife Protection Act, very very important. So the first 4 ones are really important, and CRC was important quite a time ago, but it's worth reading something about it. Okay. Then comes the conservation sites, biosphere reserves, Ramsar sites, national parks, and wildlife sanctuaries. Of course, the most difficult part will be to learn wildlife sanctuaries because of their numbers. So I recommend you start with biosphere reserve. We have less than roughly 15 or 12 to 15 biosphere reserves in India. I don't exactly remember the exact number right now. So learn the biosphere reserves, then move on to the Ramsar sites, then move on to the national parks, then wildlife sanctuary. So learn biosphere reserves in a single day and try to map them. Okay, then you are learning national parks. Try to place these national parks into these biosphere reserve. So you don't have to learn every national park in a single day. Just learn 1 or 2 every day and just give 10 minutes. And okay, this national park is here, and Simlipal is in Odisha, and major species found here are these, and okay, this belong to this biosphere reserve. That's it. And you don't have to learn everything all at once. Try to internalize it, because then only you will be able to remember it properly. Otherwise it gets very hectic. And that's all about it. And this is another thing about the international conventions. Take a screenshot. I don't have to repeat it again. This is one area that UPSC will be asking question, and questions will be like, who all are the party? Did India sign? Did India ratify? Okay, I hope you understand the difference between signing and ratifying. Signing means India is interested in the the conditions or the ideals of that particular convention. Ratifying meaning that India is enacting a legislation at home based on that. So signing is the first step, ratifying is the proper implementation on ground at national level. So whether India signed or ratified, that's very important. And what are the mechanisms in place? Okay, what sort of mechanisms? Many of them wouldn't have any particular mechanisms, but some will be having some mechanisms, like I said, access and benefit sharing, clean development mechanism, carbon trading, things like that. So that's one way to go, and that's all about it. If USA is also not a member, remember that also. Okay, and that's all about it. This is a more or less a holistic thing, because I have purposefully omitted minor conventions like Almata Convention, things like that, because having an understanding about this will really give you an advantage. Then you can plug in these smaller ones accordingly. Otherwise, if you start head on with every detail, every convention, it gets very hectic. So start with these very core concepts, and based on that, connect it with the upcoming ones. For example, like Almata Convention, Talanawa Dialogue, things like that. Connect it with whatever the convention that already is. So try to get a good picture about this, and you may take a screenshot of that. You may take a screenshot of this. So moving on, modern history. Like I said, modern history have slightly been taken a backseat based on the number of questions and the type of questions, because I wouldn't recommend you reading or going through each and everything that is. But if you are preparing for if you want to prepare it thoroughly, go through this, because Battle of Plassey, Battle of Buxar, French, British, these are not that relevant these days. But I have put that for the sake of your understanding, that these things happened and you need to have an idea for your understanding. But chronology of factories and from which kingdom they have captured, that is very important. UPSC will be asking at least one question every year. So the arrival of Europeans and all powers, not just British. Okay, remember that. Portuguese, Dutch, everybody, and from which or what were their initial bases, and from which kingdom did they get the permission or did they annex it. That's very important. Okay, so battles between all of these powers, I wouldn't recommend you go through all of that and just complicate your brain. No, it's not worth it. So these are the least important portions. If you ask me, these are like Battle of Plassey and Buxar is important, but other than that, these are the least rewarding ones. But you may remember it, Battle of Tranquebar or things like that, Vandiwash, things like that are important, but it's not rewarding. You don't have to go through each and every details, because the number of the fighting powers, both the sectors are very high, and the opposing teams are much higher, and there will be multiple wars happening, multiple treaty signing, and it's getting very complicated. So if you have time, complete everything, then move on to that area. So don't sabotage your British acts or education for this, because questions will be mostly coming from education and British Act, like the Charter Acts. So don't spoil that. So focus more on this. Then land reforms, of course, land reforms and British Acts and education and arrival of these European powers. This is what I would say important portions of modern history up to 1900s. Post 1900s, there are few different other things. So up to 1900s, this is important. Also, this Social Reform Association, priority to Bengal and Maharashtra. Like I said, we have discussed multiple personalities based on these. Based on their surname around, we have cracked multiple questions. That's why I have told you that Social Reform Association, persons associated with it, try to give priority to Bengal and Maharashtra, not Northwestern Frontier Province or any other area, because having that idea will help you answer questions not from these areas, from other areas like personality based questions. And then comes the modern area. So obviously most of the key events are important. Partition of Bengal, Surat split is important. Then I wouldn't be focusing more on this Rowlatt Act or anything. I'll be focusing on 1919 Act. Then I'll be focusing on not 1919 Act, I'll be focusing on the non-cooperation movement. Then I'll be focusing on civil disobedience movement. Then I'll be focusing on Quit India movement. Then I'll be focusing on the Indian Independence Act. So basically I'll be creating 4 pillars. I've told you this already. I'll create 3 pillars like partition of Bengal, non-cooperation movement. Then comes our non-cooperation movement, civil disobedience movement. Then comes Quit India movement and the Independence Act. So we have got 5 pillars, and I'll be filling in the information into these. Okay, the Surat split, when did it happen? It happened between the 1920 and between the partition or the Swadeshi movement. So it happened in between. And where did the Minto Morley reform happen? It also happened in between that. So this way I can have a very crystallized and partitioned way of studying, and I'll be able to fetch the timeline without actually knowing the timeline. If you do the approach like this, you will be able to get the timeline without actually knowing the timeline. If you can place it between these and this, and we will be obviously knowing the timeline of NCM, CDM, etc. So we can easily get an idea about the timeline of those things. And one more thing, then we can actually connect the information. Otherwise, a series of information. Many times you have heard that study history as a series, like a cinema or things like that. But the issue with that is you may be missing with a lot of details and a lot of key things. So, and you may give importance to maybe something that is not relevant. That's why I've told you that make these movements as the pillars, because questions will be asked on these, and try to fill in these areas, fill in the gaps or fill in the timeline in between with the events. Okay. Though I have mentioned everything, I recommend you start focusing or start constructing pillars based on these and then fill it in between. So these are the important ones, and very, very important one is Constituent Assembly. Learn as much information about Constituent Assembly as possible from the PYQ. Okay. From the PYQ, go through the PYQs and cover all the questions that are being asked about Constituent Assembly in the last 10 to 15 years. This is very, very important. Multiple questions have been asked in 23, 24 and 25, etc. So it's very important. So that's all about it. This is for the science and technology portion. Like I told you, space technology and biotechnology are the most important ones. So you should be having an understanding about geostationary, geosynchronous, polar orbit. Okay, and the space technology or space missions of India, like ISRO is most important, and then comes only NASA. Okay, so if it's ISRO and NASA and any other body is being asked, you can easily eliminate it. Then privatization of space, NSIL. This is not very important, but try to have an understanding about NSIL, Antrix and InSpace, what they do. Okay. Then the missions, Chandrayaan, Gaganyaan. Since Gaganyaan and Aditya L1 are currently a recent one, also NISAR mission, which is a combined mission of ISRO and NASA. NISAR is also important. NISAR, NISAR. NISAR, Gaganyaan and Aditya L1 are the expected ones for the upcoming prelims, according to me. So that's it. Then biotechnology, you should be having an idea about gene therapy, gene editing, stem cell therapy, CRISPR-Cas9. And everything regarding this I have discussed. The translation, transcription, translation, reverse transcription, I have given you a complete detail about that already. So go through that. Okay. Moving on. Now we'll be moving with the technologies like the blockchain technology. Repeatedly question has been asked, and it's worth knowing the definition of blockchain, because in any question a direct blockchain won't be asked, but some other technology will be given. For example, public key infrastructure, and they will be just casually placing blockchain. Blockchain based public key infrastructure could be developed. So in order to identify whether that statement is right or wrong, you need to have an understanding about blockchain. Then AI, obviously. And in the current day and age, the most important ones are generative pre-trained transformers, the GPTs, and the large language models, neural networks, how these works. So have an idea about that, because UPSC is very keen on asking the latest technology. They have asked questions about AI. They have asked questions about metaverse. So they will be most likely asking questions about large language models, neural networks, GPTs, because we are using it every day. Everybody is using it every day. It's transforming the world much faster than we know. So that's a very important one. Also, display technologies like consumer electronics technology. UPSC have asked about accelerometer. That is one sensor that we use in phone. Not just in our phone, it finds very application. But the reason why UPSC have asked is because it's inside every phone that we use. So the UPSC expects us to understand about that. Then quantum computing. That is one very important area where tremendous leaps are being formed. And in 2025 also question has been asked. Majorana chip developed by, it is given as Amazon, but it was developed by Microsoft only. So that's also important. Then fuel technology, things like that. So I recommend you take a screenshot of this if possible, and try to limit it to these areas. Don't go beyond this. Okay, definitely don't go beyond this. It's not worth it. Try to limit your biotechnology, science and technology portion to these areas. Take a screenshot. I'll give you 3 seconds and move on to this area. This is again equally important. 3 seconds I'll give you. Take a screenshot. And the most important ones are air defense system, missiles, fighter jets. Everything about fighter jets, the 5th generation, starting from the 1st generation to the 5th generation, we have discussed. About ballistic cruise missiles, we have discussed. So most of the kind of questions UPSC is going to be asking, we have discussed. So you don't have to worry about that. This is one area, like I told you, celestial bodies. This is one area where you need to have good understanding, and a maximum of 1 or maybe 2 questions you could expect. And if you don't have a factual understanding, try not to attend that. Speaking from experience, it's highly risky, because if you don't know the giant stars and dwarf stars, the statement will be like giant stars leave more than dwarf stars. With simple logic, you may think that that's the right thing, but it's not, because it's very factual. So astrophysics, celestial bodies, any questions regarding that, be very careful. Try to learn about dark matter and dark energy. It's a fundamental thing. Then gravitational lensing. It's very easy. Okay. So that's all are very basic, and try to learn about whatever things that UPSC have already asked. Giant stars, dwarf stars, Cepheids, nebulae, pulsars, etc. So try to remember, try to understand what are these and how they work. Actually, I have already discussed about all that in our science and technology portion. You may refer that also in your free time. So you don't have to go through the hassle about it. See, the guidelines I have mentioned. Don't go deep into the subject. Learn the basic working first, and it's all about advantages, disadvantages, and application. So whatever the technology is in concern, you have to study what are the advantages, what are the disadvantages, what are the applications. That's it. And then have a curious mind about tech around you. Like I said, in our phones, there is a display technology, like there is a sensor that lets our phones know that the orientation of it. That's the accelerometer. The same way there are other sensors in our phone. So try to have an idea how this works, or how our general consumer electronics works, how these cameras work, how these face IDs work, things like that. Okay. Moving on, ancient India. I've already mentioned that this is one area where you either you get a very easy question. There will be a mix of like maximum of 3 to 4 questions, and in that the split will be like 2 very difficult question, 2 very easy question. So you don't have to do much to get these 2 easy questions right, and even if you do everything, you won't be getting the other 2 questions right also. So you do the math. We are looking at the 2 questions, like the 50% accuracy, 50% of questions being right in the ancient part. That's the lower benchmark we are looking at. So the areas that Indus Valley Civilization, Buddhism, Jainism, Mauryan Empire. Like Ashoka is very important. Okay, Buddhism, Jainism is also important. But the issue with Buddhism and Jainism is that there are a lot of areas, there are a lot of books, there are a lot of phenomena happening. So start with PYQs. What are already asked in PYQs, try to learn them, try to understand what they are. Then move on to other one. And then recently questions about IVC sites are being asked. So major sites, try to identify the major sites and major features like the Great Bath of Mohenjo-daro, Dockyard at Lothal, things like that. So UPSC will be asking very simple question about that. So you don't have to be missing on that. Ashoka is very important. Ashoka rock edits are very important. Rock and pillar edits are very, very important. Okay, try to learn about that. If you are learning ancient India, I recommend start with Indus Valley Civilization, Buddhism, Jainism, Ashoka, then move on to Sangam, and then cover the other areas. Okay, and that's all about ancient India. Medieval India, the questions are like, if it's from Vijayanagara, then it's fine, we can do something. But other than that, it's slightly tricky, but it's doable. Questions about Bhakti and Sufi are not relevant, not seen much these days, but it's okay if you learn about it. But focus on Mughal administration, especially these revenue officials, like Mansabdari, Jagardari system. That's it. Then move on to Vijayanagara. That's the most important one. Okay, start with, or it's better to start with Vijayanagara and cover the rest. Then the second part, or second most important thing after Vijayanagara would be the foreign travelers like Ibn Battuta, Nicola Conti, or Francois Bernier. These are very important. During which time during which kingdom they visited India, and what are their accounts, what are their observations about the kingdoms that they have visited, especially about the slavery, the law and order, status of women, things like that. Okay, so I would recommend you in medieval Indian history, start with Vijayanagara and move on to foreign travelers, then cover Mughal administration, and then cover the rest. So that's all about it. I really hope you get an idea on how to plan your prelims thoroughly. I know this is a very quick session, but this is all you need to cover this. You need to have an idea about that. If you have any doubts, get in touch with Gallant IAS Academy and me through Gallant IAS Academy. We'll be clearing your doubts, and we'll be having, let's clear the 2026 prelims and 2027 prelims, or whichever prelims you are going to attempt, and we'll be, going for the mains, and we'll be very prepared with the mains and finally get into the list. So all the very best to the serious aspirants out there. Try following our channel and stay tuned.